Well, the new and assumedly final trailer for Jurassic World Rebirth has just dropped, and it contains a ton of new footage and reveals. Let's dig into all the new content with a big trailer breakdown and analysis, and reminder to check out my breakdown video from the previous preview trailer from just a few days ago for some of the stuff we'd already seen before. Let's get started. We open again in the InGen lab from 2010, but this time everything is okay. There's a lot of workers, everything's bright and white and shiny, and the D-Rex holding pen is entirely lacking in that red smoke we've been seeing so much. Now interestingly, this seems to confirm this is the same lab we saw in the very first trailer. If you look to the right hand side here, you can see an incubation chamber, and inside even a hint of a claw. We'll see this again in a bit. But it is at the very least the same style of chamber as the two-headed raptor one we saw previously. This suggests our protagonist will be exploring both an old destroyed lab and this relatively recent D-Rex one. We've got a lab from before the original Jurassic Park, and we've got a lab from 2010, at least. Anyways, things can't stay good for long. In the very next sequence, something has gone wrong. We can hear gunshots, and if you look to the monitor here, you can see several human figures firing guns, accompanied by screaming. Behind the machinery, the D-Rex exhibit has clearly begun to fill with smoke. Now, I posited the other day that perhaps this was a gas to take down the D-Rex, maybe just a tranquilizing agent of some form, and I really think that's what we're seeing here. I think what we're seeing is they flood the chamber with gas to knock out the D-Rex, they send men in to move the D-Rex or take a sample or just check it's dead if that's what they're going for. But then the D-Rex surprises them, it's resisted the knockout gas or the kill gas and it attacks the men in this sequence here. The operator then activates the emergency sequence, that telltale red light begins to flash, and we see most of the scientists escape with their lives. But not all, there's one left behind. The rotating man, as he'll be known, that we saw the other day. Not much new from this one, just extra time spent on his pure desperation to get out. He's begging for his life for the door to be opened, because he knows what's lurking behind him. As with a couple other scenes we'll see throughout this video, I've gone into more detail on this scene in the previous video. I don't want to repeat myself, so go check out the other video for a little bit more on this sequence. Moving through the next section, we have some brief introductions to our characters and a Martin Krebs line we'd heard mentioned in previews about 24 species surviving on the island. Now, I don't think we're going to see quite that many in Rebirth by my count. I think we're on about 13, 14, we'll do a video on that soon. But it does leave the door open for more dinosaurs we're unaware of later in the film, or indeed a sequel, if we get one. Anyways, they're once again exploring that lab, but how interesting is this? I mentioned the two-headed raptor just a little bit ago, but it doesn't exist anymore. It was a red herring all along. The very same sequence with the same incubation chamber from earlier actually contains our long talked about second mutant, the Mutadon. Hell, it even says Mutadon on the chamber itself. Now, I don't want to talk too much about the Mutadon here, we're going to see it again later on in the trailer, but I do like how messed up it looks here, as though it isn't quite finished. This is not the Mutadon's final form. It's got strands of flesh hanging off it, there's marks on the glass obscuring its true form. The same goes for the chamber itself, it's running on backup power likely and it's damaged. The Mutadon name is flashing back and forth. This is a lab that's gone through hell in the previous 14 years or so. Now interestingly, this Mutadon does have two heads, as the raptor did, but this looks to be a more experimental stage of the creature before they ironed out all the kinks. For those who don't know, this thing is purported to be a mix of the Velociraptor and Pteranodon, and as Zora puts it in the voiceover, is a result of the experimental work of the theme park owners. That will raise questions on how much John Hammond knew about all this, but I think the Mutadon and the D-Rex are probably part of a second group. I think we had the original lab back in the 80s when this island was first founded, when the lab was first founded, and then I think they've come back as part of InGen Masrani in the 2000s, 2010s, and set up this new shiny lab, and that's resulted in the Mutadons and the D-Rex. I think that's the only way everything can kind of fit logically into the canon. Next up, we get a fantastic extended preview of the Tyrannosaurus Rex River Rapids scene. Not too much information on this one we didn't go into the other day, but it is worth pointing out how absolutely stunning this all looks. This is a gorgeous film. The Rex itself feels as close as we've been to the original style of T-Rex in a very, very long time. You really get a feel for its sheer heft and weight and the bulk of the beast as it descends into the water and, like a crocodile, pursues them subaquatically through the river. I honestly think this entire scene has the potential to be the best T-Rex encounter since the original Jurassic Park. Just a big ass hungry theropod acting like a big ass hungry theropod, hunting in a believable, naturalistic way whilst looking incredible. One of the reasons I was so excited for Gareth Edwards to direct Rebirth in the first place was his proven handle on scale and size when it comes to creatures. And basically every scene here, and it's going to get more in a second, but it keeps proving that right over and over again. It's also worth paying a little attention to the sound design. Now, we've seen these clips before of the Rex trying to snatch at the Delgado family whilst they're under the water, but we've never been given the full breadth of the sound effects, and this distorted, echoey, but still immensely powerful growl as the Rex goes in for the kill is really effective sound design. We even get to finish with a classic T-Rex roar as the other group of protagonists, that's your Zoras and your Krebs, hear what's going on from a distance. They hear it from behind the tree line. So does this mean they perhaps then go save the Delgados? Is that how the Delgados survive this river rapid attack? Could this be the point in the film where the two disparate groups actually meet up for the first time? In the next sequence, more scale, we're introduced to, by my count, about 80 Titanosaurs. Absolute madness. This is dinosaur numbers we've basically never seen in the franchise. An absolutely mammoth herd of sauropods roaming a gigantic lush valley. I mentioned Edwards handling scale for good reason. This is really more reminiscent of like King Kong 05 than what we've typically seen in the Jurassic franchise, just in terms of how large everything feels. It's really selling this idea of a untouched ecosystem where dinosaurs have thrived and bred with abandon. And thankfully, we get our best look yet at the Titanosaurs in the next shot, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on here. We've got two of them in a field together, going through what is likely the courtship ritual we've heard about from various articles. I think they're just going to dance and nudge a little bit. There's not going to be any Titanosaur banging going on. But I really like that we're dealing with these new animal behaviors like this. Now, as I say, we saw a preview of this scene yesterday, and it caused a little bit of a stir on Twitter and such, so I do want to get into it a little bit. First of all, the Titanosaur has been updated a lot. The colouring and the patterning here have been updated. There's this dash of crimson along the body now. We've got this white splotchy pattern that runs along the spine much more prominently than before dissolving into the stripes across both the tail and the neck. You'll note that this sail isn't really visible here around the neck, but I believe this is part of that same courtship ritual. They've got this ability to extend and retract their sails in a sort of mating dance, like modern birds would do with a feather display. In fact, if we flick back one scene, you can see a very prominent head display, a big sail on this Titanosaur on the left-hand side. Now, I saw a lot of debate about this as well, but I do think this is actually the same scene we saw in the first trailer. We've already seen they're willing to make big changes. A two-headed raptor became an entirely different creature. The Titanosaurs, of course, look entirely different. They've not only got that new patterning and colour scheme, but they're much bulkier, much thicker in general. They are possibly my favourite sauropod design in the franchise at this point in time. I'm sorry, Brachiosaurus, I really am, but these might be my favourite. They're so interestingly designed. But of course, the big change here is the backdrop itself. Now, the reason I think this is the same scene is these rocks on the left-hand side, these cliffs on the left. They're essentially identical in both sequences, and I think what they've done is simply shift the CGI to open up the backdrop a lot more to kind of sell this more grandiose and epic feeling environment, which of course ties in a lot better with that Titanosaurus scene we just saw a second ago. The sauropods themselves are even in roughly the same positions. The one on the left is lying down, the one on the right is standing up, but the inclusion of the closer tail movement really sells the incredible size of these creatures. I just don't think we're going to have two scenes with the characters in the same position, with the Titanosaurs in the same position, but slightly different backdrops. I think these are the same scene. Next up, we have the Quetzalcoatl scene with a little bit of new dialogue here. Loomis talking about how the DNA from this egg is going to help save millions of lives. I'm still very curious to see how much detail the film gives us on this apparent heart disease and how the animal DNA is going to help cure this heart disease. But it isn't an idea unfounded by nature. We've studied shark DNA, for example, because it's incredibly resistant to various diseases, including cancer. And we've hoped of replicating the same techniques for our own anti-cancer medication and gene therapy. In fact, this was actually the plot of Deep Blue Sea. So, great film history is made from sequences just like this. Anyway, whilst there's not too much to pick out from this one, I do want to emphasize that scale once again. The shot of Loomis and Zora descending into the temple, this old ruins that they've carved into the cliffside here, this gigantic mountain. You can barely even see them on the screen. They are absolutely dwarfed by their surroundings. Everything is trying to sell that this is a vast, frightening, unknowable, but incredible place. We do also get some good new shots of the Quets in action, particularly the quill-like feathers across the back of the head. Nothing we haven't really seen before here, we'll move on, but I like the Quets, it's grown on me a lot. I wish the crest had been moved a little bit, but not a big deal. Now, despite how exciting all of this has been, it's the next shots where things start to get really interesting. First, we have this sequence of Krebs, flask in hand, assumedly containing alcohol. That might be Krebs' vice. And he's looking up at some wreckage in a tree. It calls into mind Jurassic Park 3 a little bit and the hanging corpse of Ben Hildebrand. But I also believe this is the wreckage of the helicopter that's popped up a few times. Now, if you've not been paying too much attention, that might sound a bit weird. It's only really been referenced in toys very briefly, I think, and in a size chart for the film. But there's been at least a couple references to a helicopter. The corpse is interesting. It's hanging upside down from the wreckage. It's got a gun in hand. And I think the implication here is perhaps that it was better for this person to take their own life, rather than suffer death at the teeth of whatever's lurking in these woods. Who this corpse is, though, it's hard to say. It's desiccated. It looks old to me. It doesn't look like it's just been torn apart by wildlife. It looks, mummified almost. I could be wrong, but it does feel a few years gone, and I'm going to use that to tie into a theory in just a second. And we'll talk about that right now because the very next scene contains a helicopter, assumedly a rescue one, scanning its spotlight over the environment as someone sets off a flare. Either way, the shots of this guy are interspersed with the modern day group running into the D-Rex for what I imagine is the very first time, because while characters say she's scared, and then what is she scared of? Well, before the D-Rex, let's talk about the she, because the she is Dolores, our very first in-film glimpse of the little Aqualops that's going to ride around in the character's backpack, and I would assume, generally speaking, do cute things. I think that's why it's in the film. I don't know if it's the young baby-fied sort of nature of the, it's got the big head, it's got the big eyes. This is really the only point in the trailer where I'm a little iffy on the CGI. Dolores simply doesn't look real to me in the way the other dinosaurs have up until this point. She's cute though. I don't think she's distinct enough from the Microceratops personally. I think it feels a bit unnecessary. I think she should have been pushed further towards an Aqualops. But I do appreciate some little details like the addition of the tiny little nose horns that you can see there, which is a classic Aqualops kind of thing. Either way, her fear is building up to the D-Rex reveal, first emerging from the smoke in a scene that really feels pulled from the first Alien film, only the jaw of the beast not occluded in the haze, almost looking just like a sort of slightly misshapen T-Rex jaw because it doesn't have all the bulk on top of it. But either way, enough to sell that vast size. And then a moment later, it's lit by the flare of Duncan Kincaid, giving us probably our best ever look at the creature as it follows him into the water away from the group. I hope you make it out of this scene alive, Duncan. It doesn't look great for you though. What does look great, in my opinion, is the D-Rex itself. It looks horrifying. You can still sort of see the Rex in it via the jaw shape and the buccal flaps, those bits there at the side, the sort of cheek area, and the dark patches around the eyes, which is very classic Jurassic Park Rex. But then you've got the teeth jutting out awkwardly, some partially covered, some almost fully exposed. You've got the bulbous head nodule covered as it is in bumpy, uncomfortable looking skin. You've got the strange hollow roar of the mutant. As a slight aside, this is probably the scene that journalists thought was a fire-breathing dinosaur. That's been mentioned a few times. Because the flare is right below the D-Rex's mouth, I can kind of see how you'd be confused if you... Yeah, I'm not going to say anything more, but I can see why people got confused. Either way, the D-Rex feels mutated, agonized, bizarre. It really feels very, very strange. And I think if they keep it relatively shrouded in shadow, like they have been here, and they don't overuse it throughout the film, it could be a really effective antagonistic animal, as long as it's, as I've mentioned so many times now, also shown to be suffering at the hands of the corporation that created it. Curse you, InGen. So I like that mutant. What about the other mutant? We haven't got to the biggest reveal of the trailer yet. The very next scene contains the petrol, gas if you love freedom, station we've seen in the LEGO sets before, with, as it happens, an overgrown bunker-like facility to the side that we saw way back when. There's like the first thing we ever saw for Rebirth was this image. The presence of such a station does suggest this used to be quite a thriving scientific community once upon a time. And interestingly, the lights here seem to come on to almost the surprise of the group. Did they try to activate the lights only for them to not work and then come to life later? Or is somebody else operating on this island at the same time, fiddling about with power reserves and controlling the lights or flow of electricity somehow? But really, this scene is here to introduce us fully to that second mutant. The Mutadon is very real. It only has one head, but it's going to use it to eat your face regardless. It looks here, in this shot in particular, like a bizarre vampiric beast. It really does feel like something out of like The Last Voyage of the Demeter or something. I like the striping across the arms and legs. The colour scheme is reminiscent of the Jurassic Park 3 Velociraptor, as was the coloration of the two-headed raptor back in the day. It's shot at night, so we don't necessarily see all the details, but we have quite a few good shots of it. I suspect opinions on this one will be somewhat divided. It's got the basal morphology of a raptor at the very least. It's got that thick tail for balance, it's got a pointed snout, but the pointed snout curves into this almost beak-like shape. You can see it's very, very sharp at the tip. And there's other malformations too. Now the wings are the obvious one, with this aggressively hooked skin shape. But the neck as well is much, much thicker than you would usually find on a raptor, and it's even got this sort of almost dewlap sort of skin riding down it. And the creature in general is actually quite a lot larger than the in-universe Velociraptors. It's also got, as you can see in this shot, these raised vertebrae creating these nodules of bone along the spine, and as you can see by zooming in here, the sickle claw is jutting out from the front of the foot rather than the side, as it classically does in Velociraptors. This was one of the things that made me predict that that movie poster was the Mutadon, and hey, it turns out to be correct. It spreads its arms out as it runs, and I've got to say, I really hope these things don't fly. It's been mentioned that they do, but the same article, I believe, also called them fully feathered, and this thing is clearly not fully feathered at all. The skin on these wings, though, is so aggressively designed, you can see how sharp that bend is there, that it doesn't look like it could possibly sustain flight for such a bulky creature. And if it has to do something akin to that, what I'd rather see is a sort of gangly, mutant-appropriate, hobbly gliding almost. If this thing starts soaring through the sky, it's probably going to be a step too far for me personally. We finish with the Mosasaurus sequence, and the absence of Spinosaurus does confirm this is indeed a different scene from the end of the first trailer. So we've got two big Mosasaurus scenes happening. Spinosaurus and Velociraptor don't actually appear in this trailer at all. In fact, we still have 0 in-film images of the Velociraptor, which is pretty curious, I would say. But it's not a bad thing. There's also a few other dinosaurs we know about which haven't made any appearance whatsoever, including, say, the Ankylosaurus. But I think it's nice to have some surprises as to how they'll appear and how they'll be used in the film. Anyway, we went pretty in depth on this Mosasaurus sequence the other day, so I'll once again recommend you go check out my other video for more on this scene. But we are seeing some new stuff here. We're seeing that twirling motion again through the water, but this time it's pushing the boat towards this rocky outcrop at the side of the island, one that nearly takes Zora's head off in the process. The Mosa seems to actively be holding the boat to the side of the island, showcasing more of that intelligent hunting behaviour, the likes we really haven't seen before. And whilst it's not a direct corollary, I would say that it's the sort of intelligent hunting behaviour you would see from the likes of orcas. There's also an extended shot of one of my absolute favourite shots in the film, which is the Mosa swimming below the boat, below Zora, eye wide open, staring at her. It sees her, it's actively pursuing her, and honestly, it's pretty bloody creepy. It makes the Mosa look like this eldritch abomination below the waves more than anything else here. Zora herself maybe looks a little bit shoddy in this sequence, but you never know how the CGI will be tightened up before the final film. Hell, we've seen some pretty drastic changes already. I would say this little sequence does put paid to my theory that the Mosasaurus is blind, but that was a long time ago. And I've got rid of that theory quite a long time ago as well. We'll have to wait and see how the film explains the Mosasaurus and the Spinosaurus working together. Will it simply be a rule of cool, or is there a deeper meaning behind their collaborative behaviour? We'll have to wait and see. Either way, I've got to say, I am cautiously excited for Rebirth. I feel like there's a lot the film still hasn't shown us. The D-Rex, for all of its appearances, has really still only been shown in a handful of glimpses. We've barely seen the Spinosaurus at all, and there's several dinosaurs we flat out haven't seen at this point. I feel like we've got a good handle on a few scenes, but there's tons of mystery left in what's going on this island. Who is behind all of this? I will admit I'm a little iffy on the Mutadon design. It feels like it's been pulled from like Primeval. Quite like the D-Rex and I can see it as a sort of mutated dinosaur. The Mutadon just looks like another straight up hybrid. But I'm willing to put aside that doubt for now anyway. I'm looking forward to seeing all this come to life on the big screen. I know, I'm very gracious. Let me know what you thought of the second trailer. Is there anything you would add to this analysis? Anything you think I missed? Sound off in the comments down below. Throw me a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more Jurassic World Rebirth content, analysis, and general dinosaur nonsense. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you all very, very soon. Cheers, much love as always. Bye-bye.
Road.